Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here at the WellMed Charitable Foundation's Caregiver Teleconnection session. We are so privileged this morning to have Dr. Jamie Huysman, who is going to talk to us about taking off our mask and being real. So I am just going to let Dr. Jamie introduce himself and tell you a little bit about his background and then start his presentation. Dr. Jamie?
Hey, thank you, Evelyn. And like you, Evelyn, I'm a card-carrying licensed clinical social worker who totally was that before he even went in probably to the educational world. But today I'm also a psychologist and a trauma therapist, and I work with WellMed as their chief compassion officer, whatever that means. I think we all need to be chief compassion officers. I don't think there needs to be one. And so you are too, Evelyn. You are appointed that as well today. I'm so happy to be here today. Obviously, this is something I look forward to because I look forward to Halloween. I really do. I am a Halloween kind of fanatic, and so was my wife, and we just enjoyed it and went everywhere in the world with Halloween and put masks on. And once a year, we always dressed up, and it's just a blast. Today, the curveball of life, I've been doing that with my daughter. So go figure, right? But Halloween to me is also a day that is not just sacred as the one day of the year. It's also, as a therapist, sacred to understand for me, the power of the holiday, which we know has its origins in different things in your mind. I mean, some of us look at it as being a dark holiday, some of it as a fun holiday, but it has roots in America and has roots really in our hearts and our souls, the way we perceive it. I personally love it because it gives us a chance one day out of the year to literally put our mask on and to have a good time. But maybe I need to explain to you one day out of the year. That's the point of the whole thing. Our masks as a therapist, and Evelyn knows this quite well too, are there. And it's probably our masks are going to be there. I don't want to be fatalistic, but probably our whole lives, because our whole lives is about peeling the onion. And so little by little, we take up another part of the mask off. I always looked inside of what that mask was about because I was been a Halloween kind of fanatic. And as a therapist, it just intrigued me so much to know more. And I wanted to do this presentation to you today. So let me bring you the Japanese look of what the faces are that the mask literally can cover and does. I mean, the first face is you showed to the world, right? That's the first mask, if you will. The second face you showed to your close friends and your family. Right? Yeah, but we're still not totally ready yet. We haven't peeled it. We haven't been autonomically safe enough yet to get to the third phase, which is one you never show anybody. Okay, it's the truest reflection of who you are, and you really know that better than anybody. So when I do a clinical group, I taught group work for years. I think it's the most powerful intervention, and I really sort of recommend you to go to WellMed Charitable Foundation site because the support groups at Caregivers are amazing. But when I did group and facilitated, I always looked and said, what mask do we have today? What was the face behind it? And so why group work was we created a safe vessel between 8 or 10 people. They trusted each other. We met every week or every other week. They knew they would be there. They knew the person in front of them. They knew it was confidential. And because of all that, they could just for that hour kind of answer that question. What face did we bring? And many of us looked at each other in the group, obviously, and said, what's it like to wear a mask in the group or in a relationship? And then we all realized, and I think you do too, that you can't really enjoy a happy, healthy relationship with anybody who's wearing, that mask. And I say that mask, it's not necessarily the mask at the end because, you're always responsible for the effort, but never the outcome. So taking off our mask is literally the transformation of life to become who we are today. And the reason why literally we have a mask is, and this is the trauma therapist in me, is the concept of complex PTSD, which to me is very much, something that needs to be discussed. It's kind of the things in our childhood that we came out with that went bump in the night. I'm very free with my story. I see my therapist every week. I have to use it and get in touch with it myself to grow. But I understand that the mask that I wore and still sometimes wear, right, is one that covers a lot of things. It's like feeling on guard all the time, like be walking on eggshells. Sometimes it's like looking at the world in a negative way and you stick a positive mask on, right? It's sometimes really an escape from really having to be forthright with somebody in front of us. Whatever the reason is, complex PTSD is often the reason. That means the first 10 years of your life, literally. Freud would say it's the first 5 years, but I'm going to give us a little bit over and under here. That 10 years is where your life is kind of baked, that self. Okay, so if you came from an upbringing like I did, where there was a lot of conflict and people just fighting over around you, divorce, separation, nobody really had their eye on the ball of the child that much. Instead, they were caught in their dramas. I will say that you're going to come out with complex PTSD, a way of looking at the world in a very sort of sometimes pessimistic, but certainly on guard way. So you're hyper vigilant, not trusting everything, right? So the irony of life is that those who wear masks often tell us more truths than those with open faces. So I want you to understand that if you ever had a toxic relationship in your life, and I know all of us have, and I could get into it. Many of you may have been at the presentation, which is called high conflict caregiving. And I talk about it a lot, that we don't really know somebody until we know somebody, because the mask is always there, right? So Evelyn, I will tell you that as therapists, we have what's called a DSM-5, which is our diagnostic statistical manual. And so it has 5 axes. I'm not going to get into a clinical discussion on it because that's too deep and really in the weeds. But the second one is personality disorders. And the relationship of personality disorders, okay, is a strange one with the world. Only 8%, and that's the American Psychological Association says, have diagnoses of what we call narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic, borderline, antisocial. And these are people with little or no empathy, little or no accountability, that literally kind of game you on the way. And it's mostly transactional stuff. But what they do is they wear a mask. In fact, everything in their life is in service of the mask. Every supply of people around them, it's transactional. Okay, again, 8% of the population, but that 8% touches a lot of people. They usually have 5 partners. I know if you're in caregiving, and again, I'd love to refer you to our website for the high conflict caregiving. All of a sudden you find out in these intimate times who people are. Sometimes it's not the people who change, it's the mask that falls off. And understand that we all, I'm probably wearing some sort of a mask right now, as I mentioned to everybody. But Maya Angelou said it best. She really did. And as people work in high conflict relationships, or let's say as that quote unquote narcissist or borderline or person appears, and again, that's a diagnosis. All of us have clinical qualities of narcissism. So that's a diagnosis. That's somebody who's met all like 9 indicators. So understand that when somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time, because actually the mask has slipped off. And the beauty of really what Maya Angelou was saying was, you got to go with your gut. Your gut really will know it. A lot of us stay with people in those relationships, and they're toxic relationships, thinking that we can change them, as an empath or a people-pleasing person. In the codependency world, we all want to see things as being great and it can change. Well, people with that particular disorder really have a hard time. Therapists like myself or Evelyn sometimes really don't have the answer. They don't stay in therapy long enough because they kind of feed the mask, even in therapy. And when the mask falls off in therapy, they'll put it back on. What the person will do often, and you see it a lot, is they never take accountability. They don't have much empathy. So what they do is they project it onto you. And so understand now, again, when somebody shows you that they are that, believe them. I'm asking you as caregivers, because there's nothing more deleterious and difficult for us to heal our lives than to hang around that behavior trying to change it. So understand that. So in that group, everybody, you go around the group and somebody, is sad, somebody, has emotions of disappointment, all these real live emotions. And then there's somebody who's always going to say, I am fine, doc, and looks at the whole group. Well, fine? What is fine? We don't even know fine is an emotion, right? So as a therapist, we figured that fine is just another mask in the group. So fine names, get away, really. I don't want to tell you. I don't feel safe enough to tell you. I don't need to go there with you. I just want to get rid of you, basically. And so fine is like, fantastic is like fine. I'm all right. I'm good. I'm great. All these are the masks that are in the group. Listen, well-meaning clinical stuff. Listen, I don't want to go deep in again in the clinical world, but sometimes we do need a mask when we're feeling vulnerable, and we put it on. The point is not wearing it all your life. The point is putting it down slowly but surely, okay? Getting in touch with your emotions, not necessarily having to say, I am fine. By the way, the acronym for fine, if I didn't tell you, was freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional.
Italian Job.
What?
It's from the Italian Job.
Yeah, listen, and I cleaned up that phrase right there too for all of you caregivers, because it's freaked out is not necessarily the actual word we use in the addiction centers, but the mask is. We hear the word fine, don't get upset, don't get angry. And I'll get to it when we do some breath work and talk about this is an autonomic safety thing. I have to honor the patient or whoever's in front of me. Somebody doesn't feel safe. So they'll say, fine, goodbye, doc. I'm not ready yet. And that's cool. It's a therapeutic thing. So obviously I'm probably using a presentation I shouldn't be, but I'm going to do this anyway. What does taking off the mask mean? What does finding yourself actually mean? And we can look into this, and I'm going to give you guys some places to go, because I'm very privileged to be able to be with this group, the Polyvagal Institute, and the people who are on that group are probably the masters of the brain in the terms of, not me, but they are, about how do we really get to this world of authenticity? How do we uncover our true self? How do we actually put the mask down? And literally, I'm going to try to leave time for questions and answers at the end, because I can definitely go on here. So I'm going to try to be as poignant and as short as I can. But understand that in the years before, and I'm an old time therapist, so I was trained years ago in actually a Jungian sort of way. Psychoanalytic work was we'd come in there and tell our therapist about, what happened, who did this to us at what age, how did this all occur? And we would create these emotional flashbacks. Well, what we came to find out was that it really wasn't that helpful. That once you did that, we didn't address the trauma. We didn't address the body and what trauma does. By the way, I'm going to get to it because I'm very fortunate to be able to work with them. And I'll try to give you that idea of what that trauma is. But what Dr. Gabor Mate says, and I'm jumping the gun, is that trauma is not something that happens to you. Trauma is something that happens within you. And we're going to get more into that. I want to make you sensitive. And I'm going to allow you to do a little exercise here as a trauma therapist. I'm going to, I usually ask you to close your eyes and go to find your why. I know all of us for the last 2.5 years have been dealing with masks. Mm-hmm. And I want you to experientially to close your eyes here for about 15 seconds, and I'll tell you when. And when you do close your eyes, I'd like you to go and inside and feel what it's been like to deal in the last 2.5 years with people close to you, friends, others, with their mask on and your mask on. Okay, experientially, I'm going to have you kind of go there for about 15 seconds to find that feeling inside. Okay, I'm going to do it for, and I'm going to ask you first to find out what it was like to wear a mask, and it is still, because we're still in the COVID times, and what it was like for somebody else to see them. All right, so let's close our eyes for a moment. I'm going to do this, and I'll direct you here, but with your eyes closed and feet on the ground, go inside and get the feeling what it was like and what it still is like when you were wearing the mask. Okay, I'll give you 10 seconds to do this, starting now. Okay, now as you feel that, I would like to also to go inside, stay there, if you will, and try to get the feeling of what it was like to be with close people you knew and people you weren't so close to, who throughout the day, every day you was wearing the mask and you had to look at it. Okay, starting right now. Okay, I'd love you to open your eyes and come back. Feel that feeling, okay? I do it with you, by the way. I don't direct anybody here. I went down there, and just so you know that, I felt muffled. I didn't feel that people knew me. I like this, as a kid, I like to smile. When I feel like that, I feel stifled. When I look at other people close to me, as a therapist, I have to look for nonverbal cues. So I look at their eyes, right? And I look at the wrinkles or the creases or something to give me a sign that they're actually smiling, but I don't really know, right? I don't know. Think about the last 2.5 years of this sort of wearing a mask that we've had to wear. And that's why I just want you to understand the contrast, why I love this so much, doing this in Halloween time, is because that Halloween gives me the contrast, and what COVID has done will provide you the contrast of what it's like to go through life doing that. So today's moral of the story, and we're going to keep revisiting the mask. And believe me, like I said, there's no Buddhas. If I don't go to a therapist or do groups or do what I need to do for myself, a mask of mine is going to keep coming back on more and more. But the moral of the story is, look, we need to be safe within our own self, our own system, our own life, our own nervous system, the people around us, to stop wearing our masks, okay? We also need to be in safe places where we can actually take our mask off, like a group, okay? So we can start offering our authentic self. Now, authentic self, I know, is sometimes woo-woo, and you may think it's that Barnes & Noble New Age section. It's really not. You know, the infant child really only wanted two things. It wanted a healthy attachment with its primary caregiver. It really did. And then the attachment, I hate to say this, often trumps the authentic self, because still today, the drive for attachment, and that's what codependency is so great that sometimes we always give up our authentic self in that moment. But the child also wanted authenticity. It didn't want to be gaslit. It wanted to have the child needed to have the straight scoop. Certainly didn't want to be lied to. So as we look at WellMed right now, when I do programs with groups and clinics, I literally see us, because I see myself still. It takes 10 years to get that personality of a child, and it takes 70 years to get out of it. That's what we say. The next 70 years is a healing process of trying to peel and find that authentic self. But authenticity and healthy attachment is what the child wanted. Guess what? You as a caregiver still have the same needs. You as a caregiver have the same needs as the child. And what we say in the clinical world is that we're kind of doomed to recreate our dramas and traumas until we understand and become aware and try to transform from it. And it's difficult. It's a challenge. And it's what really is the world here. So when I came out of that household of fighting and arguing, I came out with what's called codependent mask. Okay, which meant I had to wear a certain mass of people. Really, I had to calm the fighting, the arguing. I had to show relevance of why you even had a child, right? I had to be the hero child. I had to calm down the anger. And so that's what really happened, all right? It happened that in the yearning for attachment, a healthy attachment and authenticity, I had to instead don the codependent mask of a caregiver like you and be there to basically soothe. That's why even caregivers so desperately will find more energy taking their oxygen first, is what we always say, when they take the mask off of caregiving, or take the cape off, or the silver bullet that we think we can actually accomplish. So understand our needs always are healthy attachment and authenticity. Guess what? Your loved one who you're taking care of, even if there's neurological issues there, also has that same drive. And so it's important for me to point out right now is that their drives are real, even if they're neurologically decompensating, and you have to understand that it's a 50-50 deal, and they're still going to yearn for that healthy attachment. So you can't keep doing the work for your loved ones. You have to meet them halfway. Okay. The best thing about being a caregiver is meeting them halfway, because it helps their self-esteem no matter where they're at, and not doing things simply for them. So our mantra is take your oxygen first, right? Hardest thing for us as caregivers to possibly do. And taking our oxygen first really means a commitment kind of to ourselves. Okay. What is coaching? Every time somebody says that they're going to talk to a coach, I said, coaching is not external. Coaching is keeping a promise to ourselves. So you can be your own coach here. To take your oxygen first. Many of you who've tuned in before know that there's a real thing to this, that you have 19 seconds of useful consciousness should you survive, God forbid, an airplane crash. And had you not taken it first, you both would perish. But it was an ideal thing to name our book in 2006, because it represented a commitment to yourself to start taking that mask off of Superman, of Superwoman, of being the healer and making sure things go. So every time I do this, my therapist always pointed out to me, you got to learn from animals. You really do. Animals are autonomic nervous systems too, y'all. They're just like us caregivers, right? When Evelyn and I were talking about the child, that they're all so cool and amazing and naive until adults kind of screw them up. This is what this reminds me of, because every time my therapist would say to me, Learn from the animals. Learn from them. They don't wear masks. In fact, the great joke that I heard, and maybe it's not such a joke to you, but I'll tell it anyway, because listen, autonomic safety is laughing, is taking the mask off, by the way, is that if you put your dog or your cat in a trunk and also put your spouse or partner or loved one in the same trunk, you come back in 30 minutes, okay? One is going to love you and lick you, and the other one's going to stab you. So here, at the end of the day, we have to learn from the animals, because the animals don't have that level of fight, flight, freeze unless you actually conditioned it. Their first instinct is to lick you and love you and come there, whereas it's not. So have you ever seen an animal, the cat? Hopefully some of you have cats or dogs or birds, or notice them, how innocent they are and how they do things, and would they ever wear a mask? That was such a good point. And at WellMed, when we go around and talk about leadership, we literally say that it's nice to have bumper stickers. And I love Tony Robbins seminars and stuff, but really the being vulnerable and being authentic is really taking the mask off, and it's trusting that you can get to the other side. It's being resilient. And so authenticity is your most precious commodity, we tell them, as a leader. So because I'd love to get some questions and answers, I'm going to move ahead and realize that when we put the mask on, and I love Halloween. I can't wait to put the mask on. Don't get me wrong. I just want to say shout out to Halloween, but that's only one day a year. Remember that. When we put the mask on, we're not feeling safe. Okay. We're feeling walking on eggshells. We're feeling the other person's kind of danger sort of thing. We're in that fight, flight, freeze response. And we default to that, which is a childhood default. And I default to that too. If I can still default to that today. But what the solution is to literally retrain our brains. Again, is to befriend ourselves. The reason why we really don't, and this is a lean in process, the reason why we have a difficult time in life in healing is it's a difficult path. It really is. And sometimes we're just in situations, right? We think it takes too much energy. And I also want to say that, when you wear a mask, that's a huge amount of energy. Okay. So a lot of us just default to way we were, the fight, flight, freeze response, thinking that we're not going to get out of it. I'm here to tell you as caregivers, whatever age you are, most of you probably are my age, the beauty of this whole belief system of the solution of how to get to the mask is, doesn't matter what age you are, you can retrain your brain. You don't have to go back to those terrible abuses and things that held you back. Remember, I said trauma is something that, happens inside of you, not happens to you. The path out of it, the path to put our masks down, is to retrain our brain. It's called neuroplasticity. And, it's more simpler than you think. It's not like coming to see me only. So it's the attachment issue. So it's about getting real for ourselves. And listen, real for our loved ones. What does that mean? I know everybody says the same thing to me, and I say it to myself too, because I'll tell you, codependency is also a passive aggressive feature. We don't really get honest because we want to make sure the other person across from us is feeling okay. I'm still in recovery and will be for the rest of my life on that, on the people pleasing side of life, trying to be honest myself. And my fear is that I really had control over them. And as a therapist, I really burned out in 2006 when I wrote Take Your Oxygen First, realizing that I really could not cure the person in front of me, even though that's the way I was raised. I was raised as the hero child. I realized, and that it's a lot today too, it's a lot of work, that I really wanted to be with transformational energy. That's what really powered me up. And it wasn't to fix the person in front of us. So understand that the mask covers the fight, flight, and fear of ourselves. And what happens is the fawning, which we come out of it. A lot of us came out like me, the hero child. A lot of caregivers default into a hero world. But even if we can be honest with our loved ones and the people around us and our doctors, okay, we then put the onus on them to deal with it. And they're either going to go call their own therapist, they're going to call a loved one. They may feel autonomically unsafe. They may have to do their own breath work. But let me say that if you really want to take this mask off, or at least you'll never get it totally off, like I said, and when clients say to me, Doc, am I ever going to be that authentic self? I said, probably never. Probably you'll be peeling it from now till the day we pass, because it is a process. It's an onion. And every time we peel a layer of an onion, we cry. But we have to start thinking as caregivers that let's discuss how we retrain the brain. How we, when we're burned out and taking care of a loved one, how we can start reframing thinking. Reframing thinking is that cognitive sort of work of fight, flight, freeze response. It's what we're about to do at the end here when I do breath work. It's autonomically calming yourself. It's an emotional regulation. Moderating stress is just like that. Managing emotions is like that. Pierre, go ahead and jump in, and I'll try not to keep it going long. And maybe if it does go long, questions I'll hit at the end. But go ahead, Pierre, ask your question.
Sorry, I raised my hand in error. I was just trying to hit a reaction of.
Oh, you're so
We've all
cool.
done that.
Never an error. By the way, Pierre, there's never an error, my friend. The beauty of taking the mask off is that every moment is a learning response. I love the fact that you just said that. That's what I have to say to my daughter all the time. I let my daughter watch me cry and screw up all the time because I have to be honest, and that's what she expects. And I need to get to the other side. So honoring that, saying that woke me right up. So I appreciate that. And that's you just made me feel autonomically safe when you took accountability. I just feel that's so cool. But as caregivers, what are we worth to ourselves, right? The other person's going to show us. If we're in toxic relationships and we're just getting the living, hell beaten out of us, and every day is another sort of abusive thing, where are we? What are we doing? What is the issue here? How do we get to the fact of getting on 2 feet and becoming authentic, or being able to say what's on our mind? How do we clarify our purpose and meaning? Well, listen, I can tell you in any toxic relationship or any toxic situation or anytime we're being burned out, it's our values, it's our gut that will get us out. Okay. Being values like justice or peace, or what do I need, or do I deserve? That's important. So I want you to be in support groups. I really do, whether it's a hospital near you, whether it's WellMed, it's important to get reflection from others and clarify purpose and meaning, because I bet you're really a powerful person, and you don't have to do you don't have to take the abuse. How's that? Okay. All this, by the way, comes out to resilience. And resilience is what we put in the bank account to take the mask off. So when you do this work, emotional regulation, we'll get to all this stuff, and you get more deep connection with yourself. You then can become more authentic. Okay, you start protecting yourself in a way that's through honesty, and we'll talk about it later, boundaries. All right. Instead of looking at the world negatively, sometimes you can really start making a choice to reframe. Like we'll do the breath work and go from a place of dysregulation to a place of regulation at the end of this. And I'll take your questions. But it's important as caregivers, if you really want to do this work, retrain the brain and get authentic and get your life back and get the energy back, is you got to moderate your stress and you got to manage your emotions. This is where the nervous system comes in. Okay. All our lives, we never really befriended our nervous system. We don't realize it's probably the most important system in our entire bodies. It's connected to our heart, our lungs, our brain. It's what drives the fight, flight, freeze response. It makes us anxious and nervous. Even when we're not tending to it, it makes immunological issues worse. It makes inflammation worse. I sit on the board, as I said, at PVI, and we have a psychiatrist there. I'd love for you all to read his book. You've heard me maybe mention it before. It's called The Body Keeps the Score. The body keeps the score. You see, the mind is the mask of the mind can do anything. We can deny, we can project, we can do anything. We can blame, but the body keeps the score. So like Muhammad Ali, I always use it out because he's my hero. He just took punch after punch. He was the most brilliant fighter in the world and civil rights leader, and I loved him. But he would take punch after punch after punch and rope-a-dope, and finally ended up with Parkinson's, right? Though he knew he was a champion, he could float like a butterfly and sting like a bee, the body kept the score. And so he would sit there and take punches and ended up with Parkinson's. That's kind of like us. Our minds can do anything. As a trauma therapist, I'm a hypnotherapist too, and we do breath work. We can deny and project, but guess what? Throughout whatever trauma journey one's on, your body will turn you in. It did on mine. When I listen, I had to teach this, learn it, and it was part of me, but I didn't know anything until I really had to own the fact that I had to retrain my brain and go through my own trauma. And there wasn't any way around it. Anger and all that stuff is like ways around it. And putting things under the carpet was walking on a lumpy carpet. You had to lean in and start doing the work. It starts with you. it doesn't start with their loved one. If you're burned out from them, of course, you got to bring in people, and there's other seminars and great experts that you can find out on our website. Bring in geriatric care managers. We'll talk about strategies of getting people to assist you, getting some allies there so you don't do it alone, support groups. But at the end of the day, if you want to start putting your mask down and get to that authentic place. And the first attachment is your attachment with yourself. Remember, I said the child really always wants a healthy attachment. Well, guess what? You have to be you have to parent yourself here. You're the child. So it starts with you. And that is the important part to understand about putting the mask down, is that you literally can do this work. All right. And you can definitely, as I said, build the resilience. But embracing our vulnerabilities, okay, is really the critical path if you're really going to build this resilience. It's just like Pierre just said just then, I made a mistake. I did this. Boom. That is so important. So it's all about change. And it's the only constant in your life that you've got is change. Death and taxes obviously are there too, but change happens at different times in your life. And the more you build up the resilience and being authentic and, having a healthy attachment with yourself is building up the resilience, the more you're going to be able to adapt to the changes around you. And that is some changes for sure. Caregiver goes through a lot, and I'm sure you'll see topics that we have on anticipatory grief, being with your loved one as your loved one has a chronic terminal illness. A lot of the things about the change in you, that you maybe had to give up a job, you had to now give up a lot of life's issues and stuff. All these are things that we need resilience for. We need to put down the mask about, because until we do, it's just going to keep doing this. And understand, if we want that change in the people around us, and this is what we say at WellMed, and I didn't say it, this is a Gandhi quote. Gandhi, the amazing peacemaker in India, said it, that you got to be the change that you want to see in this world. And I wish I had credited him there, but that was just a beautiful saying, because it does start with us. It starts with, if you really are overwhelmed, besieged, and beleaguered, it's time to embrace yourself. It's time to really attach in a positive way. I often say this, and probably Evelyn gets tired of me saying it, but parenting is not using just simply the words of love. I love you, I love you, I love you, because that's cool. Listen, it's always great to reassure. I tell my daughter, I can't tell you how many times I tell her that, and I try to kiss her every day. But all that stuff is really great. But if you really want to show love to yourself or to a child, it's about being simply fair, consistent, and available. It's just those action steps of allowing them safety, autonomic safety. And if you're fair, consistent, and available, that's all really the child wants. So I'm asking you with yourself, there's a lot of forgiveness that needs to happen here. There's a lot of compassion you need to have for yourself. But it all starts with ourselves, if you really want to know. And all the resilience, I'm not going to go through the character resilience, is a byproduct. I know this is psychologically sort of bent, but the easy thing is, if you take care of yourself, you're going to build up the resilience. Okay. When you remove the mask, you become more powerful. The energy returns to you. I often say the mask, and this is my problem. I was a film major, and when I was with my therapist, I always refer to film. He says, "Why are you the director in everybody's life?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I think that's how I was raised." But he says, "Do you know the kind of energy it takes to direct all these movies during the day?" And I used to say to him, "Wow, it is a lot of energy, right?" So he says, "Why don't you remove the mask, okay, that you can actually direct other people? And you have to only deal with yourself." And he's so right. And so wearing a mask takes a lot of energy. All day long, you've got to put the mask on for others. So basically, you are a success when you've made friends with your past. Carl Jung called it the shadow. But when we're focused on the present, that's when we're emotionally regulated. And when Evelyn and I were talking about it's kind of getting back to play. It's getting back to the child. The autonomic nervous system is most effective when it's we call ventral. And the ventral state is really the state of play, the state of curiosity, the state where we can actually are most receptive with innovation. When we have that mask, that fight, flight, freeze stuff, it just freezes up. I mean, look, I'm the first to admit it. I would fight and flight. I would be in a relationship, get angry and get quiet and go somewhere else. And what would happen was I would get depressed, because what is anger turned inward? It's depression. What's anger turn outward, right? The other side of the continuum is, unfortunately, it's homicide, right? So it's suicide and homicide are two ends of the depression scale. What we do when we have that mask and keep stuffing is that we're not like there, we're not present, and we're kind of eating it up and stuff. So I'm going to ask you to try to, again, to adopt self and as child, and to be fair, consistent, available, and reparent yourself. Okay, this is the only key that we could possibly do, is have that grief session with your therapist. And I do believe in therapy very much. I wasn't trying to say I don't. I think that if you can get a good trauma therapist like, Evelyn or Ian, I wish, gosh, I was back in clinical work. But if you can, you'll have somebody who reflect this back to you. A safe place to somebody who understands complex PTSD, and you can go to Psychology Today and put your zip code in, and out will jump a bunch of cool trauma therapists, or also caregiver people who know that. But the end game of this is, how do we reparent ourselves? I can sit here and mull over the fact that my parents fought their guts off, and I am a product of that, and I didn't trust anybody, and my relationships there, and I had codependency. But at the end of the day, I have to grieve the parents maybe I didn't get, let go of that, and have radical acceptance, and start saying, well, what can I do to reparent myself? And now that is really the neuroplasticity. Okay, it's the key to our own health and happiness, is that we're really responsible for that. It's natural parental energy. And I bet you many of you in the caregiving world are using that amazing maternal or paternal energy right now to take care of somebody. I really am. But what I'm asking you, and we ask you at the Huysman Charitable Foundation, is to turn it for yourself. When that, if you're dealing with somebody else's mask, I'm here to tell you, and all the clinical skills I've got, all the academics, and Evelyn probably is going to tell you the same thing. We can't change the other person in front of us. We can facilitate them to get awareness and transformation, but we can't change it. If we can't do it with our training, how can you do it? Right? How can you do it? So when I'm at WellMed and I see we all have these they come from this codependent world. And by the way, codependency, I use it almost a lot because it's putting that mask on. It's meaning that we get our self-esteem from people, places, and things. So by our mask of being that people pleaser, our mask of being fine, not being true to ourselves, that mask covers the family hero, or is the family hero, or is the victim, or, in cases of a lot of you, you may have been the lost child that you just hung around animals and didn't get engaged as much. But codependency is a mask, okay? It's a mask that prevents us from being a healthy, interdependent group. That mask, unfortunately, is a one-sided thing. And I hate to say this, y'all, even though I am in recovery for codependency, it's a passive-aggressive thing. It's trying to, in service of the mask, do things that really is almost a manipulation of others. The authenticity is you have to trust the process. You have to let that person feel what they need to feel. And if obviously they have their own therapist, they have their own program of recovery, they have something. We just can't keep enabling. So taking off the mask is creating interdependency. Keeping the mask on is codependency. So I always say to everybody, what happens if you remain that hero child? And that's that director. Do you know the Superman kryptonite is that what my kryptonite was total burnout. And that's what your kryptonite is caregivers. That we have well-meaning, and you probably doing amazing work with your loved one. But at the end of the day, this is a marathon, not a sprint, right? So to make it to the end, whatever that means and wherever that is, it has to be that taking care of yourself, that burnout. It means creating a healthy relationship, okay? It means that when you're authentic, you need to look at things like compromise. You deserve that people who are meeting you halfway. You deserve honesty and respect. You have a lot of value. You don't want to hang around people that are bullying you or dominating you, controlling you, abusing you. That's the toxic situation. That's the unhealthy relationship. So at the end of the day, it's about parenting yourself as we come back and enjoying the mask coming up. So these healthy relationships are important, but I want to turn you on now to what I told you about initially, which I think is the key for y'all, because personally, it's a key for me. When you go on YouTube, I'd like you to look up Gabor's work. He is everywhere on there. Okay, and his new book, is fabulous. It's about normal. It's about what is normal. He was a came from the Holocaust in 1944. His mother gave him away basically to keep us safety when the Nazis came in. And that 1 year of his childhood, the attachment issue, plagued him all his life. Now he's in recovery. He is a powerful primary care doctor who really understands the mind and the brain and the caregiver and what authenticity is about and what healthy safety is about. And he said it best: safety is not the absence of a threat. It's the presence of connection. It's a healthy connection with yourself. It's a healthy connection with your loved one. It's a healthy connection with your family. Connections mean everything, okay? Unhealthy relationships separate you. It's so critical at work, as I tell people, and we have to be human beings and not human doings. And what does that mean? Well, if I'm going to be strong for my daughter, I have to also know that I can be weak. I'm a two-edged sword. Caregiving, nothing points that out more to us than caregiving. Okay, is that we are vulnerable. We also are strong because we're weak. We have to tend to the shadow side. Okay, we have to tend to the fear side. We're wise because, you know, we have to be humble enough to know we make mistakes. I mean, God, I loved it. I just heard the honesty and authenticity in Pierre's voice when he said that. It was there. And you got to laugh. Okay, that's where your autonomic safety feels great. But we laugh because guess what? You know, sometimes life and suffering is not really the way to go, and it's inevitable. When we say pain is inevitable, suffering is not, right? So I want you to understand that get to healthy family members, hang with them. Don't try to change those around you that you can't change. Get to a support group where you have people who have your back, who you can let the mask down in the group, that you don't have to constantly say, fine, everything is fine. You know, make sure you're in a situation where you're not being controlled or manipulated, where people aren't dictating to you the terms of the agreement, okay, who honor you, are compassionate for your voice. Look, at the end of our lives here, and this is the last chapter of mine for sure, if you got 3 or 4 people in your life ever that can do that, you're done it well. I mean, that's fabulous. If you can have people who have your back, do that, okay? Understand, though, judgment is fear. Can't keep judging yourself. Acceptance is yourself as love. To do all of that as caregivers and to take the mask off, I also want you to look up Brene Brown's work. So Gabor's work is fabulous. He'll get you to the core of why authenticity and why attachment is so critical for us and our energy. Brene is going to get you to protect that. And she talks about her recovery. And she's very powerful and she's very understandable. But if you can realize you're probably an empath, if you're on this phone and you're caregiving, that you need to have boundaries around that empath. This world desperately needs you. It needs the empathy, but it doesn't need you to be sucked out. There's a rock and roll group called Smashing Pumpkins. And as soon as he comes out, one of his songs, he says, the world is a vampire. It's true. If you don't emotionally regulate, you don't set boundaries, when we fail to set them, we hold people accountable, we feel used and mistreated. So the caregiver mantra always is, grant me that serenity to accept the things I can't change. You're not going to change that person's disease, the history. You can change the beauty of the relationship. Have the courage to change the things you can and the wisdom to know the difference. Let go of control. Realize that it's your mask that we have to deal with, your authenticity. So your health plan is your medical, the health plan is your social connection, your health plan is your physical, and first, before your loved one. And understand, if you're going to need to make a decision, love is your job description. Okay? Putting down the mask means we don't second guess. We don't people, but it is that. Go with your gut. Love is your job. And no matter what you do for a living, if you ever feel unsure of what you're supposed to do in a situation, here's a good rule of thumb. Okay, always do what leads to greater love. So that is easiest way to show yourself as a caregiver is stress. Easiest way to do this is emotionally regulated. Easiest way to build a resiliency bank account is to be mindful of your own body, okay? And to be able to put the mask down. This is how you put the mask down. I know the whole thing, you had to sit here for God knows how long, you hear me drone on, but it's all stress reduction. That's your emotional regulator, okay? This is where your caregiver homework is. And to do this work, you got to lean into it, which means you got to do things experientially. The longest journey you ever make is from your head to your heart. So the answer is not going to be in the book. If you read it, you're just going to become a smarter caregiver, okay? But you're not going to be a feeling person that's going to touch yourself and embrace yourself. So you got to do the work. The work is breath work. The work is meditation. The work is yoga. The work is walking around the block and chilling when you're feeling reactive. The work is calling a friend and nurturing the friend that meets you halfway. These are all the work. It's not like you have to go plug yourself in somewhere, right? These are the things that really come natural to us or should come natural to us to put the mask down. So at the end of the day, you become more self-aware. Putting the mask down is self-awareness. And I'm going to lead us right now into breath work and give us a few minutes possibly for questions and answers. But breath work is the way that human beings, unlike the animal world, can actually take the mask down and feel safe in the moment. Breath work is the way we go. I'll tell you about meditation later. I'm going to do it now. Is a way we can actually shift our bodies and go from a negative experience to a positive. Breath work is a way that we can regulate our bodies and go from despair to encouragement. Breath work is the way that when we're feeling that mask and the energy of the mask, let's say you're in a reactive fight with somebody or you're in that fight, flight, freeze response. Breath work is a way to take 80 seconds off and come back feeling better. It grounds you on the 2 feet. It transforms your chemistry. Okay. And it's something you can try, get into. It's experiential. I want you to trust the process. You don't have to do the breath work with me, but it's physiological and the evidence is really in. And you can do this work. And this is the beauty of it. When you want to put the mask down, do vagus nerve work. And the vagus nerve goes from the cortex of your brain through your healing organs into your gut. So you can unlock that. You can actually be the one to put the mask down and feel comfortable. Unlock the power of the vagus nerve through breath work. Now, if you don't want to do the breath work, I totally am great with your independence. You know, as a hypnotherapist, somebody believes that you need all the boundaries in the world. There's other trauma reduction techniques. Okay, when I ask you to close your eyes, do the breath work, you can pray. That's a trauma reduction technique. That's a neurological shift. That you continue to do this. Putting the mask down is a long process, y'all. It's like water going over a rock. You can put your treatment plan together. You can pray, you can meditate, you can go to a safe place you once were, touch it, feel it, and smell it. You can just be silent and chill. And then, you know, like I said, breath work is sitting, closing your eyes for 80 seconds. Dr. Weil, who I always give here as a reference, drweil.com, is really the master who brought it to the healthcare world. And you guys are healthcare people. The caregivers are family first responders. And this is what we use with COPS environment. So those who have tuned in before know how to do it. Those who are new, this is what we do. I'm going to ask you to do this 4 times, 4, 7, 8. And here's how. I'll ask you to breathe in through your nostrils for 4 seconds. It's cool. It's refreshing. You can feel you're alive. Keep it in your mind for up to 7 seconds. If you want, you can have a guided image of peace, roses, flowers, whatever you want. Or if you just want to stay silent, you can stay silent. But when you exhale, exhale loudly. Exhale so you can trigger the vagus nerve. That's your autonomic nervous system. That's the secret sauce for literally when you have that mask up and you're feeling tense, of putting it down. Okay? So let's try it together. Those who would like to, those who don't, you can close your eyes and do the alternative. But let's do 4, 7, 8 together, simply 4 times, okay? So with your eyes closed and feet on the ground, if you have shoes on, feel the floor through your shoes. And if you're barefoot, feel the floor through your feet. With your back upright, with respect for your body, let's do 4, 7, 8, okay? Breathe in through your nostrils for 4 seconds. Keep it, swish it around up to 7 seconds. Now, blow out with passion for 8. Breathe in the calmness again for 4. Keep it. Swish it around for up to 7. Now, blow out the anxiety for 8. Breathe in the calmness for 4 seconds. Keep it. Swish it around for up to 7. Now, blow out with gusto for 8. Last time. Breathe in the calmness for 4. Keep it. Swish it around for up to 7. Now, let all the anxiety you might be feeling for 8 seconds. With your eyes still closed, feet on the ground, feel that you just shifted the chemistry of your body. As a caregiver, as a human, we really always have this at our disposal to let the mask down, to autonomically feel safe, to literally produce a hormone in our body called oxytocin, which connects to our neurotransmitters. In less than 80 seconds, you don't have to sit on a mountain in Tibet for an hour a day. okay? These are the grounding techniques that you can put in your plan to lay that mask down. And when you're ready, open your eyes and come back to your meeting. Realize, okay, as we put the mask down, we have to have self-compassion. Our breath work is a moment of self-compassion. It can change your day. This breath work is really a string of moments just like this that can change the course of your life. When you're feeling the mask, so when you're feeling its weight, you realize that this is always at your disposal. So be very mindful of yourself. Be authentic with yourself. Okay, enjoy the living daylights of Monday, October 31st and Halloween. Put the mask on. But after you do, take it off and then parent yourself in a way that really is the way to moderate your stress and your emotions. And just watch your life unfold and be kind. It's 3 forward and 2 backwards. It really is. Be kind to yourself. So know that better things are coming. They are. Take your oxygen first. Keep calm and just breathe. Evelyn, it's all yours.
Thank you. We have, let's see, maybe 2 or 3 minutes for questions, and then I have some announcements I need to make. So we had a chat here. I think I might have erased it. No, does a codependent appear to have narcissistic personality disorder?
It's so ironic you say that because I'm a recovering codependent right now. I think you can have both. Okay. Codependency is kind of a passive aggressive way of wearing a mask, but I'm not. If a person's in recovery, they're usually accountable. They go into a 12-step program. They can do a 4th step, like taking a moral inventory. They can also apologize to people in the 9th step. So if you're actually working a program of recovery for caregiving, you're probably not a narcissist. You're probably an empath at the end of the day. So understand there is that famous dyad relationship, though, between the empath and the axis 2 that we do fall into. We don't worry about diagnoses. Just don't get into a toxic relationship. Your gut will tell you when you're walking on eggshells. Don't worry about diagnosing anybody and take care of your own self, you know, and we're all kind of weird to be caregiver codependent somewhat. And so just don't worry about diagnosing anybody else. And I doubt, for instance, if you can do a 4th step and be a recovering caregiver, that you're also narcissistic. It's almost impossible. So,
you know, I wanted to say that the 8% of people with personality disorder, some of those are care recipients. And we had a really good presentation Tuesday by Dr. Barry Jacobs, who really talked about the importance of setting boundaries with people with personality disorders. And it was very interesting because so many people are suffering, you know, while caregiving for people with personality disorders, and they don't need to.
I agree, Evelyn, and I think y'all, and Barry's wonderful. He's brilliant. We also have high conflict caregiving, I think, on our website too. And usually if you're in a relationship with a personality disorder, it's always going to be high conflict. It's a toxic situation. So go to Barry's work for sure and go to that seminar too, and realize that you're more important than hanging around an abusive environment like that, or bring in the allies to help you with that abusive environment.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to do a little housework here. And how many repetitions for the breath thing?
Oh, thank you for asking that. Whoever asked that question, because I'm going to tell you, go to YouTube, watch Andy do this. It's 478. Put it on YouTube and put WEIL. Out will pop Andy. 4 times is all you need. But Andy does it even better, much better than me. He'll ask you to stick your tongue up on the roof of your mouth. But it's on YouTube. It's a 2-minute video. And keep doing it and pass it on to your loved one. And you don't need a license or certification. Just keep doing that breath work and constantly calm your stress and your emotions and your nervous system.
Great. Okay, in several days, my participants here will get a post-session questionnaire. We'll have attached several of the resources that Dr. Jamie talked about. However, if you're not registered, you won't get that resource information. So if you got this phone number or the Zoom link from somebody else, please call WellMed Charitable Foundation's customer service. And that number is 866-390-6491. And that's if you're not registered. And the great thing about that, about getting registered, is that you will get the monthly calendar, which is pretty fabulous. We have so many things coming up in November, not quite as busy as this month was, but tips for caregivers of Alzheimer's and related dementia patients. Ask Dr. Tam, who is brilliant in terms of dementia and dealing with dementias. We have a modern caregiving for modern millennials. Interesting. Since like 40% of our caregivers now are millennials or younger than 65. We have a Spanish one. Let me see. I'm going to have to look up what that says. And then we have managing the holiday challenges of family caregivers. And we have Dear Lucy, dementia and inappropriate sexual behavior. Now, those are all going to be on that calendar that you get because you register. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank our caregivers so much. Thank those of you who are on the phone and everyone else that you may know. You are the backbone of long-term care in this country and in the world, basically. And we so appreciate what you do. Also, I'd like to thank Dr. Jamie, as always. I don't know how he talks so fast and I remember everything. It's so great. And he makes me laugh. And I also want to thank the WellMed Charitable Foundation for sponsoring all of these, organizing them, recording them, and making sure that people have access to them on the website. And again, if you want to go see a website, the podcast, it's www.caregiverteleconnection.org. And we would love to have you go on there. I think all of the rest of the chats, Dr. Jamie, somebody wants to know if they can get a copy of the PowerPoint.
Oh, I'm happy to. Actually, I've got a better copy than the one I just used. And I'll get it to you, Evelyn, for sure.
Okay, great.
And you can, but that's under one condition, obviously, that you tell me what you're going to wear on Halloween as the mask that you're going to put down at the end.
Gotta have a bride.
My wife will tell you, we just dressed up in the weirdest things over the years, but enjoy it. Just put it down the next day. Enjoy yourself. And that's it.
Okay. Otherwise, everybody just said thank you. So,
Thank you.
and I'm sure they're thanking you, Dr. Jamie, because you always do a brilliant job. We appreciate it. Goodbye, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording. We thank you so much for having joined us. And we hope